So it's the middle of January, and I've talked about enough true shooting percentages and guys averaging 9 points a game. So we're going to talk about an argument that was had on Twitter last night between Kevin Durant and Kendrick Perkins, because why not? So basically, Kendrick Perkins says Russell Westbrook is the best OKC player of all time because the length that he was there and he stuck with it and all that stuff. Kevin Durant comes back and says, okay, whatever. And then Perkins and KD have a little exchange, and then finally we get the, you left OKC to go to the Warriors, you guys were up 3-1 and all that stuff, and then KD's like, yeah, well, you sucked and averaged 3 points a game. So where do I go with all this? Well, I mean, first off, it's just pretty cool. Like, the tweet that I had replying to all this, where I was definitely looking to get some likes, no doubt about it, was basically me just saying, this is a real thing happening on Twitter right now, good lord. It's one of the best players in the league, in the NBA, one of the biggest athletes in the world, and a former player who, wasn't a star or anything, but he was well known, having a back and forth that you would see two people having in high school or something, you know what I mean? And it's kind of an interesting thing to just see the real players, because that's something that NBA players have to manage so much nowadays, is the idea of, do you ever let your true self out? Because everyone's unfiltered self is not necessarily always super clean cut, is one way to put it. I mean, another example of this not long ago was Kevin Garnett on Bill Simmons' pod, where you can tell KG was doing his normal, like, I'm trying not to curse and sounding really awkward like he always has on Inside the NBA. And then Bill started talking about the Heat series, and then KG starts dropping F-bombs. There were a couple of N-words in there, and it's like, oh, this is the real Kevin Garnett. And it's pretty cool to see this, because, like, how many super high-profile athletes do this, you know what I mean? Like, who else is going to casually reply to people on Twitter like this, whether it's Perkins or just, I mean, KD could reply to me one day if I just tweet at him at the right time. Now, one criticism you can throw at KD is that he usually just responds to criticism, which the criticism of that is, well, Kevin Durant, you're too thin-skinned or defensive or whatever. I mean, he probably is, but we're all defensive and thin-skinned. It's just a matter of the profile or the platform you have and whether you choose to voice it or not. I mean, you think I don't occasionally see tweets aimed at me where someone's criticizing something about me? Of course it gets to you. I just choose not to reply to it. But this is another thing. It's like, well, you want the real athletes, but then you get it, and it's, oh, wait a minute, not every single human being is some great person who always says the right thing. We saw this with LeBron and the China stuff not too long ago, you know? And it's just a very interesting line. I mean, I think Greg Popovich has dealt with this where, well, I shouldn't say dealt with it, because he's the one who created it, where he was being an ass to sideline reporters all the time, and we were all like, oh, LOL, it's Popovich, it's so funny, and then Westbrook does it and we have a problem with it. I think there needs to be consistency within the media. Like, if you're going to have a problem with somebody showing off their real self and saying the wrong thing sometime, then call everybody out on it, you know? Did I potentially just go off on a little tangent there? Yeah, maybe, but I don't know. This is not a normal vid with random X's and O's and team standings and whatever else, so we might be a little all over the place. In terms of the conversation itself between KD and Perkins, right? So, I want to say this. Perkins, at one time, was pretty alright. Okay, yeah, he averaged like 7 points and 6 rebounds, but he was a vital part of the Celtics' defense, and if he doesn't get injured in that Game 7 in 2010, there's a chance the Celtics end up with 2 titles from that era. Also, because I just want to be a homer for a second. And KG also got hurt the year before, so like there was a world in which they went to 3 straight finals and they were very close to winning 2 of them, just saying, before anybody wants to start crapping on the KG Celtics. Although we can definitely criticize them for how loud they've been for winning 1 championship. And even then, it's really just KG and Pierce. Like, everybody else is just kind of like, alright guys, shut the hell up, you know. Also, just to hold myself to the same consistency, if Andrew Bynum was healthy for the first finals against the Lakers, maybe the Lakers win that series. Anyway, the point of that was Perkins was pretty alright. And then when he got traded to OKC, everybody was kind of like, oh, this is the move OKC needed. Because, I mean, Twitter wasn't as big back then and everything, but that was the consensus. It was OKC needs a physical big. They got Perkins, it was a big deal. Guy fell off a cliff basically immediately, couldn't defend pick and rolls in space whatsoever, and it ended up being kind of for nothing. But at the time, it was kind of a big thing, so I guess that should be mentioned because I feel like there's a lot of like Perkins was a scrub and all that, and I mean he was probably a scrub longer than he wasn't a scrub in the NBA, but there was a set amount of time where he was viewed as one of the more impactful centers in the league. Not one of the best offensive and not a switchy defender, although that was not as valuable back then. But he was still viewed as a pretty high impact player. I mean, I think Dwight Howard even said that Perkins was one of the best post defenders in the league or something. Granted, Dwight Howard was not Hakeem on the block, but he was actually pretty decent for a time from there. I know it's tough to remember. Anyway, let's talk about the 3-1 thing, with Perkins saying that and voicing something that a lot of people have said. I mean, I don't know. Like, is anybody really wrong with the way they want to say all this? Probably not. I mean, was Kevin Durant's degree of difficulty in getting his 2 championships easier than other titles have been for certain star players, whether it's MJ, LeBron, Tim Duncan, Kobe, whatever else? Yeah. At the same time, there's people who will say that 3 of Kobe's championships don't work because he played with Shaq. So, I mean, I don't know. I really don't. But at the same time, do I view Kevin Durant's title the way that I would view LeBron beating the Spurs, well, Miami beating the Spurs, LeBron being the best player, before they got blown out by the Spurs the next year, and then them beating the Warriors, the 3-1 comeback? No. So in that sense, okay, fine, there's probably some validity to the whole Kevin Durant's rings don't count or whatever. In terms of just pure talent, if we strip away all the accolades from every player ever and we just look at talent, Kevin Durant is very high on the all-time list, but of course that's not the entire thing when it comes to that, right? And it will be interesting to see just over time how we view Kevin Durant's career, and this is something I have thought of a little bit. I haven't really done a video on it, but the idea with Durant of, it goes back to the will the rings be viewed favorably or like, whatever, he didn't really win those things. Or will it be like, nah, man, it's really tough to win a championship and whatever else. I think it's also going to really depend on how his tenure with the Nets goes. I mean, if he's back to his real self and he's, best player in the league, MVP candidate, the whole thing, and let's say the Nets win 2 championships under Kevin Durant, he's the best player, no doubt, and let's say they even go to a 3rd finals, okay? Then I think it'll be a lot easier to be like, yeah, KD is a top 10 player all time or something. But if that doesn't happen, then we're going to look at that. We're going to look at, okay, well, he did win the rings, but, so yeah. I think it's also interesting to see just a player like Perkins saying this, because it's like, does this mean all NBA players actually feel this way? Which I wouldn't fault them for believing. Everybody on the frickin' earth who remotely cares about basketball has had this conversation that these two had on Twitter. Well, maybe not the Perkins part, but As far as who I think won the exchange, I mean, listen, dude, I'm not in high school anymore, so I really don't give a crap who, quote-unquote, won the exchange. If anybody really won it, I think the winners are all of us, really. I think KD and Perk are doing just fine, but if I was forced to pick a winner, which I feel ridiculous saying that, I really do. I don't know. I mean, I think KD has the best tweet of the exchange with our starting center averaged a whopping 2 and 3 during that series. It was fun. That's the number one thing to take away from this. It's entertainment. It's the middle of January. We need it, and we got it. So there you go.